I'm Michael Reese.
And I'm Woods Davis.
And this is the Digital President Podcast.
We've cracked the code for generating customers online for every business model.
In fact, we wrote the book on it.
We've built multiple multi-million-dollar businesses in as little as 90 days. And the one truth that we discovered is
the best business model is doing what you love and living your life by strategy.
You truly can follow your passion and create the life of your dreams,
as long as you have the right strategy.
If you're a real estate agent and you'd like to learn how you can partner with us to help you implement our strategies and systems in your business so you can make a lot more money and have a lot more time freedom, all without ever paying us a penny or giving up a percentage of your commission, go to partnershipdetails.com and schedule a call with us today. While it's fresh in your mind, go to partnershipdetails.com. Now on to the podcast.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Digital President Podcast. This is episode number 35, and we're going to talk about how real estate teams work. You know, there's so many people that have great teams. If you're new to real estate, then you probably could look across your community in your marketplace, and you probably notice that a lot of the top people, the people who are getting the most listings, seem to be getting most of the business or have a disproportionate share of marketing, are what we call as these teams. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk to everybody that wants to know, how do teams work? So this is going to be a great episode, and we're going to get straight to the point. And I think at the end of this episode, it's going to let you know how things work. But most importantly, we'll cover some of the mistakes that people make when building the teams. We've actually worked with some of the top teams in the world, so I think you'll find this episode very useful. My name is Michael Reese. I'm with your co-host.
And I'm Woods Davis.
How you doing, brother?
Man, doing great. Excited to talk about real estate teams.
Let's do it, man. Well, let's kick it off. So, I've been asked, and I'm curious how you would answer this question, Woods, because I was asked here recently, Mike, what is a real estate team? And I think, for me, I thought everybody knows what that is, but so many people get into this business and start as a solopreneur. I'm curious, how would you describe what a real estate team is?
Well, I think very simply put, a team is when an agent starts to offer services to other agents in exchange for a portion of their commission. And usually those are like services above and beyond, obviously, what their broker offers them. And usually that's things like, maybe closing coordination, additional assistance. And a lot of times, one of the main things is leads, right? More opportunities for them to generate more business. And again, in exchange for that, the agents that are on the team give up a percentage of their commission to that team leader.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you nailed it. I also think, when I answered the question for somebody, and, I hadn't been asked it in a long time, one thing that came to mind, because this individual where they were, what I tried to explain to them was that a real estate team is also, as at a very basic level, is when you're not by yourself, right? So, a team can start with just an assistant. It surely can expand into, it can expand into having people help you with marketing and sales. But traditionally, I think most teams start out with getting somebody else to help them above and beyond, because really brokerages don't have the incentive. If they have a cap, what they're really saying is, hey, we're going to give you back more of the money so that you can create a business structure, whether that's keeping the money or if you want to scale. And most of the time, once people have scaled the ability to actually consistently generate clients, then they have a decision to make, because it's a functional organizational structure. What I mean by that is you have people, like you said, closing coordinator, photographer, courier. You have all of those roles and responsibilities, and you have to make a decision, and you really find yourself, again, as you start to become a producer. And I think we laid this out. If you haven't seen, we have the stages of the real estate business where you go from a solopreneur and you start to get to the hustler phase. If you haven't watched that episode, I highly recommend you watch it, especially if you're looking at building a team. We'll put a link in the description. It'll kind of walk you through each step of that evolution. And as you're evolving, it just makes sense. You can't make $1 million a year doing $20 an hour work, right? Putting listings into the MLS, handling the contract to close. If you don't change the outcome, you can delegate that. So it really starts, and then it transitioned into what me and you are usually more, used to, which is the opportunity side, which at that point, it's really the ability, a team is giving you the ability to make leveraged income versus transactional income, where all of the dollars coming into the business are reliant on you going out and, helping a buyer or a seller or a leaseor or a leasee, meaning you being part of the transaction directly with your time. It's allowing you to get leverage from other people so you can do more of those revenue generating activities. But I think one thing to point out here, in Woods, I know we've said this before. I mean, it's a created world when it comes to a team. You can design a team however, in theory, for what your vision is. So if you're going to build a team, what you really need to do is get a vision of what you want your life to look like and what you want your business to look like, and then work backwards to what are some of the things that you're currently doing that you don't get fulfillment, that you don't change the outcome, that aren't enjoyable, and start thinking into the future of how you would compensate somebody else to do those things. And man, it's an amazing opportunity, because it can really turn into a business when you start to find yourself becoming more passionate about scaling the opportunity for getting a customer, because there's so many agents in your marketplace that see value in the value proposition. If you can actually make this promise to other agents that you can help them get customers by working with you, that you can help other agents be more productive by your training that you provide, the tools and systems and everything that you had originally said. So I think that's very important. But one of the questions is, well, why would you build a team, right? So why would somebody build a team? And I think at the essence, it is that leverage versus transactional income. But at the end of the day, don't you agree that it's mainly because of time? I mean, that for me, that's what it was.
Well, sure. I mean, anytime you're getting leverage, you're essentially you're buying your time back. You're making a financial investment to acquire resources, whether that's, human capital, whether that's marketing systems, that's something that are assets in the business to build the business. And essentially you're hiring people to do things that you don't want to do to get your time back. And where a team really starts to evolve, and why you really want to build a team, is because if you invest in systems, especially, and you invest in people, usually those people are going to have more capacity than just servicing the transactions that you generate, or the business that you generate. And so, or you're in a situation where you've got more business than you can even personally handle, and there's opportunities that are simply falling through the cracks because you don't have the capacity or the time in order to capture those. So that's where that creates opportunity for other agents, and it gives you an opportunity to really start to shift into becoming a business owner, where you're in the business of running the business. You're in the business of creating opportunity for other people by creating systems, by hiring people, and in order to scale out that opportunity, which gives you your time back.
Yeah, and I agree. It definitely gives you the time back. But the question really becomes, I mean, here's the thing: if you go by what we say, and I think you nailed it, and I don't think people caught that, and I want to reiterate capacity, right? So something that I want to point out is sometimes when you start a team, you might start a team by having just a photographer. And when you start a team, that might be a variable expense. That might be somebody in your community that offers professional photography for everybody. Some teams have their own internal photographer that he doesn't have anything to take pictures today, whether that's headshots for a business card, whether that's photos for an Instagram, whether that's a house to go on the MLS. Same thing with listing coordinating, REO. I think it's important to understand that, teams by nature, when I said they can be any way, I've seen teams that just function, highly, most of their business is REO. I've seen teams that currently operate where most of their businesses function and organized around YouTube. I've seen people who function and organize around a very specific geo area, and they're teaming up to leverage the capacity of their fixed expenses, their listing coordinator, contract to close coordinator, and they have more capacity, and so they're growing and expanding into other markets. And instead of trying to service all that, they're actually building a team where they can turn on their lead generation, and instead of just targeting this city, They can take that same campaign, that same ad, remove city, move it over here. So they're starting to scale, right? And they're getting that capacity. But again, some people when they're building this team, again, it's getting your time back. It also, for some people, it gives them that leverage to make more money, that leveraged income. So what I mean by that is, I think you pointed out something in the very beginning. I want to make this point. When you start in real estate by yourself, your value proposition is to the buyer and seller, okay? You're making an offer to them for them to look to you, and your goal is to articulate why they should do business with you. When you've done that, and you've done that really well, and you've moved up the stages, and you're now in this hustler stage, you start to find yourself almost like you're running on a treadmill at 10 miles an hour. And so you start to offset some of those things that are not getting done in a timely fashion, are not getting done at their best ability, because you're starting to understand that there's different functions, different roles, different level of expertise. And really, you're trying to move yourself up to what we call as the 9 box, into the higher leverage, higher revenue generating activities. Therefore, obviously increasing your income. And by doing that, you're doing it usually by not having to do more deals. Well, that starts to decline, because when you start growing a team and you start outsourcing transactions to a buyer agent, a listing agent, typically these are licensed people, and they become the largest portion of the cost of goods sold. What I mean there is, you're going to give a large portion of that commission to that agent for a function. Now, some people, they keep the function of conversion. And I want to make a point of reference here. Most people, when they do that, do the buyer leads, because again, we know that lead listings are going to provide more leverage. There's going to be a fixed time that they have to invest in working with the listing versus a buyer. Buyer can look at 18 homes. Usually a seller can meet with you within a certain amount of time and decide if they're going to list with you. So usually that agent starts to transition into, attracting this talent. And the question is how much training are they putting value on this person to show homes, like a showing agent? Are they putting value on this person to convert the abundance of leads that they're generating, because they have a machine that they built, and they have a core skill set that allows them to attract customers, but they have no more time in the day? So the point of reference there is that teams have many different structures, but inherently they're structured in a way to allow the person to step out of transactional revenue into a business and start to create income, not from their own efforts. And in order to do that, they have to organize those people in order to create an opportunity and have a true value statement, not only for the consumer now, but for an agent on, hey, I can be at the broker, but at the broker, I have less consistency. And my probability of being success is more limited, because more of the responsibility are put up on me to either invest money or time. If you're going to take those things away, I would rather take less of a split, but do more transactions. Ultimately, the value proposition to that agent is, I'm going to technically make more money instead of sitting around with time, but no one to work with, right?
And I think that you're really outlining too. I mean, that's a real big point of why agents would join a team, right? Is because they want to have more opportunities. They want a higher probability of success because you have proven systems that they can plug into. But I'm curious to know, obviously you've run real estate teams. You've had, some of the most successful teams in North America. What do you think the big motivating factor, or even for somebody watching this video who might be considering joining a team, what advice or why would you say that people join teams, or maybe should join a team?
Well, for exactly like I said, I mean, what I said was, the reason why agents join a team is they want more consistency. So they want to make more money, and they have to decide how they're going to make that investment. Are they going to go invest into additional third party? Maybe you have a high split. Maybe you're on 100%, doesn't matter. But maybe your broker isn't giving you enough value in exchange for the production. And let's face it, 100% of nothing is nothing. So, it's less split and more net, right? And so people join teams in order to have certainty and predictability, peace of mind, and to reduce their risk and increase their probability of success. That's at the bottom. I mean, I think that's fundamentally why people join teams. People want agents on their team because it obviously gives them their time back and takes them out of that transactional type mindset. Now, one thing to point out here is that, and where I thought you were going with your question, Woods, was the mistakes that people make. And I think that there's, for people who've stayed on to watch the video this long, you're probably really interested in joining a team. But I think, going over all the pros, looking at the adverse, I think it's important to understand why people, fail with teams. And I think the most important thing is that it's lack of a value proposition, meaning they're not making a clear promise and an agreement on what people have expectations and no agreement. So I think that there's not a clear agreement. I think the more you can get clear on what agreement and promise you're making to an agent, and the more that is measurable on what you're agreeing to, what you're responsible for, and what they're responsible for, which should be, outlined in their independent contractors agreement. Like, here's what I do, here's what you do. And I think it needs to be to the detail of the metric, right? So if I'm going to provide you leads, I'm not going to say I'm going to provide you leads. I think that the person who has the courage to say I'm going to provide you X amount of opportunities, and opportunity by definition is someone who owns a home, and out of, really making them a lead generation and economic model based upon the assumptions of what they think they should be able to produce if they have the skill sets and put in the work on the conversion side, which is how most of those. So like, for instance, if I'm going to provide you with the buyer leads versus seller leads, I think that's, if I'm going to provide you with 50 seller leads, the split's going to be completely different than buyer leads. If I'm not certain as a team leader that I can keep that promise, then let's not leave that to expectation. Let's make that an agreement. That's the one mistake. The mistake that goes, if you have all of that right, if you did everything right, you decided you wanted a team, you had those all things, then the biggest mistake is a who mistake. And it's always first who, then what. Jim Collins, he wrote Good to Great, How the Mighty Fall, Built to Last. And the point that he makes is first who, then what, is I think that you have to find the person who shares your right values. There's a lot of different exercises that you could do to do that. But I think if someone joins a team where the values are, it's a misalignment in core values, even I'm talking, this is the problem in most people's relationships in the world, with their spouse and everything. So taking the time to know your value systems and understanding the questions in which you would have to ask in order to know if someone shared those same values is very important, whether you're interviewing somebody that you're going to work with long term. And a lot of the times, if you can go back and think about the people that you've worked with in the past and say, okay, I remember I worked with this young lady or this gentleman here, and man, they just, I did. If you can get to the core of, but you didn't enjoy working with them, if you can get into the core of why you didn't enjoy, and maybe it was because they did not do what they said they were going to do, maybe they gossiped. If you can get to the core of the things that are against your value system, and you can hire to those values, and you can articulate to somebody when they're doing something wrong and tie it back to a core value. When you're going to join a team and you're trying to interview teams in which to join, if you can clearly articulate your value system and find out, what type of things would happen that would cause you to feel like there was a core value alignment. So an example would be, if I was looking to join a team, maybe I don't want to be micromanaged. There's a lot of teams out there right now that they micromanage people, and they do that because of the lack of, they're all trying to get the same thing. They're trying to do better, right? But my question would be, and what would be expected of me for you to know that I'm doing a good job, right? Meaning, at what point would, because if I'm joining a team and there is some expectation of me, right? And what reasons have you let go of agents in the past, right? Now, if I'm bringing somebody on, I would know when I let go of an agent or when I've had a bad experience, I would reflect on that, and I would get down to that core value, and I would try to understand those questions that I could ask someone to find out if I'm hiring a similar person. And I think between those two things, which is really, mainly understanding, what those core values are and getting real clear on what the agreements is. And there's a book out there called The 4 Agreements. Highly recommend it. I would even give it to anybody that joined my team so that you can be working from agreements. And I use the word expectation, but I use that when I say expectations, I feel like if I communicate my expectations, then we either have an agreement or we're not. Expectations that aren't communicated are not agreements. Agreements are things that we both are on the same page and we agreed to, this is what I'm doing and this is what you're doing. So I think those are some of the things that you can look out for, especially if you watch the video and listened into the podcast this long. One thing that we'd like for you to do, if you found this valuable, make sure you check out the description and go watch the different stages. We'll put a link there. That's totally will give you the roadmap for going from a solo agent to being one of the top producing teams in the country. It'll give you the roadmap and the stages and the things that you need to consider, the problems, the challenges, and the obstacles that you'll need to overcome in order to move to those next levels. And if you like our channel and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, turn on notifications. We put out new content every single week if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening to on iTunes. It would be amazing if you left a comment. But with that being said, Woods, that's all I got for today. Real estate teams, how they work, episode 35. I think we covered the topic.
Yeah, I think so, man. At the end of the day, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. If you're really trying to grow a business, you're going to have people to help you. And at the end of the day, you got to have a strategy. So like we always say, the best life to live is a life by
strategy.